Okay, so some of the features we're really happy with. It's simple, but the carb style Walker air cleaner is easy to get off and on. It's not a hassle like some of them. It's easy to maintain. These automotive coils, they're readily available, but they support nearly 250 horsepower per cylinder. So doing what we do, they do it very easy. We've taken the time to label everything on the harness. So this little yellow tag is, it tells you that that's for coil 4. Everything is labeled. We left a little bit extra length on there because anyone that's tried and undo these cam position sensor plugs knows that it's just no joy. So you can pull it out there, get it out of the road, get a good hold of it, and do that. That just tucks back in there like that. We spoke about it briefly before, but we put a lot of time into the initial off-idle action. So those that are familiar with the fly-by-wire, the ECU does all that for you, but it's a very vague feeling. There's no mechanical connection to the throttle plate at all. So we're full mechanical, but we put a little bit of time, or a lot of time, into the cable drum. So the initial roll into the throttle is reasonably slow, and then it speeds up as you get deeper into the throttle. That in itself has made a big difference. We covered these plugs here. We covered the fact that it's all TEFZEL wiring and DR25 heat shrink. It's pretty well NASCAR spec without exaggerating at all. We have a little return spring, a little stainless outer cable bracket. It's all pretty simple and neat. We encourage people to log fuel pressure. The system is really simple, and if you've got consistent fuel pressure, it's going to run right. So having a recorded log of fuel pressure becomes quite important. The harness comes already with the plug on it. The fuel sensor itself is an option, but the harness comes equipped to just plug it straight in, and we run that straight off the fuel rail. There's one earth. The whole system earths on the back of the block. We've left a little bit extra cable on the crank sensor. It runs the factory plug, and we've left that for the same reason. Anyone that's familiar with them knows there's a coolant hose out the back, so we can pull that out, plug it in, and then tuck the whole thing back underneath the coolant hose. We also use the standard Yamaha coolant temp sensor, so there's nothing there that you can't, that isn't readily available. We use a non-contact type throttle position sensor made by a bunch called Eurosensor, and that's really critical when your EFI is solely mapped on throttle position. You need a good sensor. A lot of the factory sensors just aren't up to it. The low throttle openings rely a lot on map, and we don't rely on map at all. We've tried to keep it really simple. So we touched on it before. The fuel rail and the actual billet throttle assembly is all marine grade anodized, so corrosion it's not going to be an issue in the lifetime that you're going to own it. As far as it being modular, if you run the Yamaha this year and you want to go to the Suzuki next year, the only thing that changes is the intake runner. We'll email you a new map for the ECU, and everything just plugs in exactly the same. There's no trickery there. We have different length intakes and different volume intakes. So if you've got a high-speed engine and you're happy to run it into the high 16s, maybe low 17,000 range, we have something that makes peak power around that 16.3, 16.4 mark and just sort of hangs on. If you're in a limited class where perhaps you can only run to 16, 16.1, we have a combination that just brings all those peak numbers down lower in the rev range. So everything happens a little bit earlier because you can't turn it quite as hard. No point having an engine that makes peak power in the mid 16,000 range if you only run it to 15.8. We sell the whole thing less our harness and less our ECU. So if you currently run a PA legal system based on perhaps the Suzuki ECU and loom, or perhaps based on the PE3, you can still run that system and run all our hardware. There's a lot of little unique things that we've incorporated that we think is pretty cool. The injector is a methanol compliant Bosch Motorsport injector. It's an extended nose thing that runs at about 85 pounds. It can block, but it's very rare. We run the kit comes with a specific fuel filter that we use, and it's very rare if you use that fuel filter to have any sort of blockage. We use the analogy, you don't see Porsches pulled up on the side of the road all the time with blocked injectors. Well, we use the same components for that reason, and we don't have any trouble in that respect. The system itself is very light. The complete system with the harness and the ECU is right on the 7-pound mark. We don't believe there's anything else that light out there. So once again, if you've got any more questions or something that we haven't answered, yeah, don't be afraid to shoot me an email or contact us via Facebook, and we'll endeavour to get to the bottom of it for you.